what could be the final nail in the coffin for the Democrats' resistance against Brett Kavanaugh. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will join me exclusively in moments, revealing what he said to Collins in today's lunch meeting just moments before she said yes to Kavanaugh. And amidst the Kavanaugh fight, the Me Too movement is now hitting the boardroom, but not in the way that you might think. Raymond Arroyo is here with me for Friday Follies, and you'll want to stick around for Diamond and Silk. It's not Friday without Diamond and Silk. But first, the Democrats' phony victim play. That's the focus of tonight's angle. The Democrats and many on the left worked around the clock to kill Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court. But I think they made a fatal miscalculation. They thought it was okay along the way to jettison the principle of due process and to use victims to pursue a radical political agenda. And on this first-year anniversary of the Me Too movement, I think it's important to remember that this all started with liberal Democrat Harvey Weinstein, friend of Bill and Hillary's, and of course Barack Obama. And remember, he, the Hollywood mogul, big mega donor, I mean, this guy is where it all happened. And remember, the abuse there started the cultural moment of Me Too. This notion of objectifying women and using them for the pleasure of the powerful has been long nurtured by the left. At the same time, they're like, oh, we're so pro-women as we abuse women on the casting couch, etc. And the entertainment industry had the target on its back. But now we see the same mentality at play in the Kavanaugh struggle. For other claims to be defenders of women, the Democrats cynically and I think cruelly used Christine Ford in a desperate attempt to derail a Supreme Court nominee. Remember, she didn't initially want to come forward to tell her story. She was dragged into the open by political leaks to the Washington Post and other media outlets. And remember, reporters surrounded her home. And then she was forced to tell her story. And today, we learned of more dirty tricks from these activist lawyers behind the scenes. Remember Leland Kaiser? She was the person who Ford claimed was at the party where Kavanaugh allegedly assaulted her, one of her close friends. Well, Kaiser previously told the Senate committee that she didn't know of such a party and didn't even know Kavanaugh to begin with. Today, though, she told the Wall Street Journal that in the FBI that a former agent, another friend of Christine Ford, Monica McLean, pressured her to change her account to corroborate Ford's account. Unbelievable. Well, in a speech announcing her decision to vote for Kavanaugh's confirmation today, Senator Susan Collins perfectly summed up the callousness of the Democrats.
Some people who wanted to engineer the defeat of this nomination cared little, if at all, for her well-being. Professor Ford testified that a very limited number of people had access to her letter. Yet that letter found its way into the public domain.
And today, Dianne Feinstein left no doubt as to what this nasty, senseless battle was really all about all along. The left's desire to use the Supreme Court to impose liberal social values on society.
Another issue that gives me great pause is Judge Kavanaugh's extreme view on guns, the challenging realities women face. Roe v. Wade, what kind of medical care you can receive.
Well, this has been a problem for decades. The American left believes the court should be kind of a super legislature, a body that makes law rather than interprets law. Since Trump announced his candidacy to the presidency, the left has been in perpetual rage mode. And of course, this continued into the night. And it's going to go on for some time. And this is how they attempted to influence Susan Collins before she announced her vote. Check it out.
Did he perjure himself? Line made up.
Don't put a liar on the court. 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 Don't put a liar on the court.
Ah, nice. And this is how they work their charms on Democrat Joe Manchin after he announced he was supporting Kavanaugh.
Shame!
But based on what you've seen, was that an thorough investigation?
At least it's a one-word chant. It's easy to follow. You know what's really shameful? Democrats who use victimhood as their defining principle. They'd rather have people dependent on government, helpless without it, especially certain groups, minorities, immigrants, and even women. We're supposed to believe that we can't survive and thrive without an activist court making up new rights, finding them in the Constitution, and they demand that we believe anyone who claims victim status. We have to take them at their word, regardless of where the facts lie. But for all their screaming and their tiresome chanting, the left's basically come up empty this time. Most Americans don't see themselves as victims. We're not powerless or weak. We're strong and independent. This was the Democrats' miscalculation. They thought emotional extortion and protester histrionics would be enough to block a well-qualified Supreme Court nominee. But once again, they let their rabid political ideology blind them to the fact that Americans are fair-minded, have a basic goodness about them, and they're optimistic about the future. They don't need an activist Supreme Court to see the light, to know where we are as a people, to see our future. And that's the angle. Joining me now is Code Pink's co-founder Medea Benjamin, and former Kavanaugh colleague Helgi Walker. She also served as associate counsel to President George W. Bush and clerk for Justice Thomas on the Supreme Court. Great to have you both on. Medea, do you deny that the left ended up sadly using Christine Ford as a political cudgel in this battle?
No, not at all. I think her story was an important one to be heard. I think so many of these women who came in from around the country, I was in Lisa Murkowski's office, I was in Senator Collins' office, they wanted to tell their stories. It's a flooding of emotion. And I think people need to hear these stories. I think it's unfortunate that it doesn't look like we're going to be able to...
Do emotions trump fact?
Emotions are part of fact. Emotions...
Not necessarily.
Yeah, but I think in this case, the opening of the possibility for women to tell their stories has been
What's preventing... I'm sorry, but I keep hearing this. Women can't tell their stories. Women are strong, more than half the population. I think mostly more than half of law school classes today. More than half of university enrollment are women. This idea that women are these damsels in distress and we don't have a voice and we can speak anytime we want.
Have had the good fortune of not being molested at a young age.
Medea, don't pull that card on me. What I'm saying is that the idea that women are damsels in distress and they need an activist Supreme Court to rescue them.
You don't understand the trauma of sexual assault.
Why did Christine Ford's name get outed? Why did her name get outed?
I don't know, but it was outed, and
she didn't want it to be outed. She was used.
She wouldn't have come to Washington.
They used her. Did she look happy to be there, Medea?
Obviously,
she didn't want to be there.
It's terrifying.
They dragged her in there.
It was terrifying.
They used her.
Important. Let's say, Laura, we agree on one thing?
They used her.
It is good that women are now coming out and telling their stories. Is that a positive thing?
They used Christine Ford.
I think it's a wonderful thing.
They used her. And that was a sad thing to use her to try to kill this nomination.
They gave her the opportunity.
They abused her.
To tell her story.
She did not want to be there, and she made that clear in the first few minutes of her testimony. She never wanted a public hearing, and for some reason, I don't know why, she never even knew that Senator Grassley had offered that the Judiciary Committee staff could come to her in California or offered a private hearing. Did her lawyers not tell her that that was an option?
What did they want, Helgi?
They wanted a public spectacle, and that's exactly what they got, Laura.
They wanted a circus. They wanted to flood the Capitol with the victim stories. They wanted to besiege senators in elevators and yell shame and spit in their faces and get a centimeter from people's faces like they're horrible people because they don't think that you should jettison due process because you have an agenda to kill off a Supreme Court nominee.
Senator Collins said it best. They did not care about Dr. Ford's feelings or well-being in the slightest bit.
Of course they did, and they gave her an opportunity that she wanted, and they've given women in general an opportunity, and this is going to change history. It might not change who's on the Supreme Court, but it's going to change the way parents bring up their sons. It's going to change the way young people relate to each other. It's going to change the way men act towards women. Well, and that's a positive
thing. This is a Women's March tweet that went out today, Medea. I think we have it up on the screen. Senator Susan Collins, rape apologist. Do you agree with that tweet?
I wouldn't say she's a rape apologist. I would say she didn't listen to the women who, so in such a heartfelt fashion, came to tell her, please, listen to survivors, believe women, believe Dr. Ford.
So do you think all women, regardless of facts, years past, no contemporaneous corroboration, in fact, people that she claimed were in the room, signed sworn statements saying, I wasn't there, I don't even know Kavanaugh, including her best friend.
And she
despite
said she's
that,
100% certain. And
okay, so all four people in the room were lying.
Another thing that has really gotten to us a lot is the way that Brett Kavanaugh acted at that hearing.
Oh.
And I think that's important because
really?
I don't want
you ever been in a courtroom with a judge? I've been in a lot of courtrooms.
Yeah,
you don't know what judges are like.
Arrogant, petulant, sarcastic, mean, aggressive. I mean, even Judge John Paul Stevens,
So that
the retired justice, a lifelong Republican, after watching that, said
a lifelong liberal activist judge on the bench.
If somebody flat out lied about you on a national stage, would you be upset?
And I was going to be one of the 9 people out of how many, 350 million people in this country that was going to sit on the Supreme Court. I would sit there and have a much more deferential attitude towards the senators.
First it was he was a rapist, then he was a gang rapist, and then he was, oh, he drank too much, and then that didn't work, and then he's like, well, he was aggressive, like Cory Booker.
Nasty, mean.
Oh, please. I mean,
sarcastic.
Well, guess what?
Disrespectful towards the senators.
300.
300 court opinions. Overwhelming reaction by people on the left and right who appeared before him in 12 years on the federal bench, Medea. 12 years, not a day on the Senate Judiciary Committee, but 12 years. Have the utmost respect for his judicial temperament, reasoning, and authority.
And
so
then he went up to the next level, which is to get on the Supreme Court, and he failed the test.
Oh, really? It's called
Absolutely.
2 words, Medea, life tenure. He's going to get confirmed tomorrow. Okay, I want to play something for you. This is Susan Hennessy, and I just happened to catch this leaving my house today because I like to turn on other networks just to get some comedic relief. This is someone I've never heard of, but her name is Susan Hennessy, and it was so unhinged on a Friday night. I thought I'd play it for you, Helgi. Let's watch.
Okay.
The extent to which Senator Grassley relies on women to do his dirty work, to actually get the job done whenever he needs votes over the line, just speaks to how unbelievably tone deaf these individuals are. I do think that it touches into the same sort of incandescent rage that we are seeing in response to the Kavanaugh confirmation.
That's a big phrase, incandescent rage. Ooh, okay, you got that. And Grassley's relying on women to do his dirty work.
So what
does that mean?
What is she
we should
saying?
Exclude women from the vote?
Susan Collins is controlled by Chuck Grassley. Susan Collins stood up and gave an incredible speech in the tradition of Senator Margaret Chase Smith. She spoke to reason. She spoke to fact. She gave a very principled explanation.
Almost an hour.
And thank goodness, Laura, somebody broke through this morass and brought some common sense and some decency and maybe reset this process to something near normal.
Real quick.
Well, here we see the difference because I thought Murkowski's speech was very heartfelt,
Collins.
very deep, and very good.
Oh, my God. Are you kidding me? Murkowski said, she lost me when she said, our role of advice and consent. It's advise and consent. I'm sorry, if you're a U.S. Senator and you don't know it's advise and consent, sorry, you already lost me there.
From the heart.
But Medea, you're like emotion and heart. I'm not saying it's not important. We all love good emotion. We love a good cry. We love a good laugh. But at some point, facts and reason have to win out. I mean, in life, they ultimately win out, do they not?
And there was a doubt about whether he did this, and so he should not be on the Supreme Court, period.
I hope not. You never are subjected to an accusation,
a job interview,
that
and he
destroys
failed
you.
it.
He actually didn't fail it because he's going to be confirmed on the Supreme Court. Okay, well, that's a different way of scoring it. Ladies, thank you very much for being here tonight, both of you. Medea and I go way back from the early 2000s on radio. It's great to see you. And it's no secret at this point that the grassroots protesters at the Capitol are often funded either directly or indirectly by some George Soros-affiliated groups. Now, we've shown you the evidence of that, but for daring to raise this possibility, Senator Chuck Grassley was called an anti-Semite. A New York Times op-ed writer, David Leonhardt, writes, let's be clear here. Charles Grassley is a United States Senator. He's responsible for his words, and his words amount to an anti-Semitic smear. Michelle Malkin joins us now with reaction to that craziness. and how it's this crazy kind of sometimes mob mentality seems to be taking over politics and certainly Capitol Hill. Michelle, did George Soros have any involvement in the funding of like this, what is it, the Center for Popular Democracy, where the ladies cornered poor old Jeff Flake in the elevator the other day and he looked very scared? Yeah. Were they involved in that?
Yeah, the Center for Popular Democracy is aligned with George Soros's entire network, and he is the son in the center of a galaxy of these left-wing resistance groups that have morphed over time, whether it was Move On or your previous guest, Medea Benjamin's Code Pink. Now there's a new generation of these groups, and CPD is one of them, along with Code Pink 2.0, Ultraviolet. And it is the protest orchestration, I think, that really needs to be investigated, not only among the funders and the philanthropists that back these professional mobsters, but also the people that they were coordinating with within the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's still not as answered who gave the Senate gallery passes to people like Linda Sarsour and Piper Parabo and these others who from day one, second one, minute one of the hearings were enacting the plan that they have announced ever since Donald Trump won office. And I think that this Senate Democrat wrecking machine is not going to give up after Judge Kavanaugh is nominated and approved tomorrow. They're going to go on all the way through the midterms and 2020. And I think it behooves the right and the conservative movement, Laura, to make sure that we don't leave a vacuum in these spaces.
Yeah, Michelle, you took the words out of my mouth, because you really have to hand it to the left's power to organize. I really give it to them, because they bus people here. They put them up at, local churches. They all print out the same glossy posters. Kavanaugh. That was actually kind of clever, I have to admit. But they get their word out. I mean, and they really did, I think, ultimately delay this vote for a week. They were ultimately not successful, but they dragged this thing out for another week. And look, until the last vote is cast, I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed. Anything can always happen.
Same.
Everyone needs a taste tester tonight, don't you think, Michelle? Like, everybody should have their food tasted. But
yes,
they did have an effect, and they are cowing some of these more moderate senators. So they ultimately voted for, or they will vote for Kavanaugh.
Yeah, that we do need boots on the ground. There are millions of us women, for example, Laura, who feel the same way we do, and you voiced it well in that previous segment, who rely on facts and logic, and who believe, as I do, that we need to believe evidence, not gender, as the default. And, it is hard for these elected officials when they've got screaming, baying mobs of these feminist hounds and nobody on the other side to counter them. And I always hear, of course, from a lot of small business owners and parents and family members on the right, well, we have full-time jobs, so we can't be there. And obviously, on Election Day, they will have a voice and a vote. But, maybe it's time we pay full-time people to answer that and make sure that we are represented on the ground in the Beltway, because it's not going to stop.
Right. There are a lot of conservative businessmen making a ton of money in this economy, this Trump economy. They got to pony up money.
Yes.
I mean, the Democrats are doing it. Steyer's doing it, registering hundreds of thousands of people to vote, including young people, Puerto Rican voters moving to Florida. That's a big deal. And it can't be all on you, Michelle, to pull us over the finish line, all right?
And I want to say one more part of the plan, which is I heard that you're going to move to Alaska and run for Senate against Murkowski. I'm going to move to Hawaii and run against that crazy Mazie Hirono. All right?
That would be fun.
Although I'd rather be in Alaska than Hawaii. You want to trade?
No, I'll do the fly fishing. You can do the surfing down there, Michelle.
Right.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Historic night here in Washington, D.C. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is here next, exclusively with us, his reaction to today's events, and a look ahead to tomorrow's historic Kavanaugh vote. So stay right there.
Those who have known him best have attested. He has been an exemplary public servant, judge, teacher, coach, husband, and father. Mr. President, I will vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh.
That was Senator Susan Collins delivering a crushing blow to Democrats, hoping for a last-minute defection. During her nearly 1 hour-long speech earlier today, she echoed many of the sentiments offered on the Senate floor day after day by our next guest. We're happy to be joined exclusively tonight by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Senator McConnell, when did you know you had the votes?
When the roll was called.
No, really? You didn't?
Yeah, they were all very guarded about making an announcement. So this is one of those rare situations when you go into a vote not really knowing for sure you had them.
Because you usually call cloture, you don't usually call cloture unless you know you have the ultimate votes, correct?
We had to move on this. I mean, this was not going to get any better if we didn't vote. I decided a week ago we were going to vote on Friday because we watched what was happening. They were trying to destroy this good man with all these rumors and all the rest of the stuff. So we needed to have the vote in order to bring it to a conclusion. Why
didn't Senator Murkowski ultimately go along? We got Flake and you got Collins with that long speech today. She really impressed a lot of people with her passion and her dedication to advising consent. What happened to Murkowski? Well, I'd rather celebrate the victory. And I think there's plenty of credit to go around President Trump for making great choices. Chairman Grassley for doing a heck of a good job in committee dealing with all these outbursts. My members dealing with, we've been under assault, Laura. Our homes have been, they've come to our homes. Yours was today, this morning.
Yeah, but not just me, everybody. I mean, they've been after all of us. We've sort of been under assault. And everybody decided to stand up to the mob, do not be intimidated by these people. I just couldn't be prouder of my members for refusing to roll over under all of this intense pressure, all these lies. This is a great day for America.
The Senate is under siege. The protesters don't seem to be letting up, even late in the afternoon into the evening tonight. Is this the new normal? And I want to play something. This is Senator Manchin. This was after the Collins speech today and after he said he would vote for Brett Kavanaugh. Let's watch.
Look at us! 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 Shame!
But based on what you've seen, was that an thorough investigation of it?
A lot of my radio callers today said, is this the way it's going to be? I mean, is there going to be any changes to building access? You don't want to become cocoon, but any changes to how you let people into the building?
Well, I think security will take care of that. Look, I think the main point is that the mob was not able to intimidate the Senate. We stood up to the mob. We did the right thing for a good man. I filled a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court. There's a lot to celebrate today. I couldn't be prouder of all of my members. Senator Collins was outstanding. You had part of her speech in the entry.
But the Democrats now have raised, just during her speech, they raised almost $2 million on a GoFundMe page for an undetermined candidate. And Susan Collins is apparently seriously entertaining a challenge against Senator Collins in 2020. Your thoughts?
Senator Collins will be well funded, I can assure you. Look, there's a lot of enthusiasm on our side, too. You may or may not have noticed the rising enthusiasm among Republican voters. I think our people are going to be just as fired up as theirs a month from now, and everybody's going to remember what they did to Brett Kavanaugh.
Is this the shot in the arm that the Republicans needed?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is it's a wake-up call to why it's important to hold the Senate. The Senate's in the personnel business. I love the House, but the Senate's in the personnel business. If you want to get judges confirmed, cabinet members confirmed, boards and commissions confirmed, we have to control the Senate so the president's nominations can actually be confirmed and take the jobs.
Do you intend to use this issue on the campaign trail for the last 4 weeks, and what are you going to say about it?
Absolutely. I'm going to remind everybody of the importance of the Senate. 2 Supreme Court appointments, 26 circuit judges, a record for the first 2 years. These are lifetime appointments with conservative men and women who believe that the job of a judge is to interpret the law as it's written.
Well, what about repercussions for what happened during this process? I was here for Judge Bork. I was young speechwriter in the Reagan administration. I was here for Justice Thomas, obviously. But I think this actually rivaled both of those. It was brutal. And Lindsey Graham was on with us last night, and he talked about the need for repercussions against the wrongdoers in this case. Let's watch.
I believe Dianne Feinstein didn't leak it, but I don't know about her staff. I do know this. Her staff recommended to Dr. Ford Ms. Katz, who hates Trump as a politically active leftist lawyer.
But why not get secure their emails and texts, leaking confidential information? You were going to do that tonight?
Here's what I'm going to do. Anybody who did this is going to pay a price.
Will they pay a price?
I think it'll be investigated, but, you know, it didn't work. I think the most important thing to note here is that these tactics did not work.
You don't want to go through this again. You want to pay. Well, people need to pay for
what I want these people to know, Laura, is we're prepared to go through it again. They're not going to intimidate us. They're not going to tell us how to vote. And they've actually, you know, they actually helped us win this vote. Their tactics actually helped us unify our people and win this vote. They're going to help us win a month from now on November 6th, too.
Do you think you'll pick up Senate seats, and
I hope so.
Which ones?
I hope so. This underscores how important it is. I mean, we have a close margin, a very close margin. I'd like to have a few extra Republican senators.
Let's talk about the media's role in all of this, amplifying charges. We had another point I want to play from Susan Collins when she talked about the rape rooms and these words that were being thrown around against this esteemed judge. Let's watch.
The allegation that when he was a teenager, Judge Kavanaugh drugged multiple girls and used their weakened state to facilitate gang rape. This outlandish allegation was put forth without any credible supporting evidence and simply parroted public statements of others.
Including the media, a celebrity porn lawyer?
I mean, I can remember when that sort of thing was not put on the air. I mean, people didn't just peddle nonsense with no corroboration. That really exacerbated the problem. And a lot of the Senate Democrats, of course, would mainstream that stuff right into their discussions and try to convince everybody that it somehow happened. No corroboration at all, just rumors all over the place.
Senator Merkley from Oregon was quite upset today. He said this.
Chuck Grassley, the chair of the committee, and Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, they said there's no contemporaneous evidence to support the women who came forward. That is not true.
What are we missing here, Senator?
I don't know what he's talking about. There was no evidence to corroborate any of the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh. Maybe he's on a different planet. I'm not sure.
Right now, when you look back on this last couple of weeks, and you've had an incredible run of confirming circuit court judges and district court judges, but just this experience, lessons learned for the Republican Party, the Senate, maybe the president going forward.
Well, I think we reaffirmed that in this country, you're presumed innocent. The presumption is in favor of innocence. We also relearned that you should not allow mobs to intimidate you. And I think it's a good lesson for us. I think it unified our conference, made us excited about the November election. It was good for the American people to see that these people were stood up to and they didn't get away with it. They did not win. That's the most important thing.
How radical has the Democratic Party of today become?
It's a pretty wild bunch. I mean, it's pretty clear they were willing to do anything, say anything to try to win. No boundaries.
You still have close friends in the Democratic caucus after all this, or motion's pretty raw?
I think we'll get past it in terms of relationships, but it was a tough period, I hope they learned a lesson. You can do this kind of thing, but it doesn't necessarily get you to victory.
Mitch McConnell, congratulations.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks so much for being here. All right, ahead, Friday Follies with Raymond Arroyo. And the first story is connected to you, Senator McConnell. Anti-Kavanaugh protesters hold an impromptu kegger in front of your house this morning. That and a whole lot more on that important, a very important night tonight in the history of our country. Stay there.
Yeah, it's happening.
Friday, I'm sorry. It's Friday, which means it's time for Oh, it's Friday Follies, where protesters get creative outside Mitch McConnell's house, and sexual politics are taking over boardrooms and classrooms. For all the details, we're joined by Raymond Arroyo, Fox News contributor, comedian during breaks, and New York Times bestselling author of the Will Wilder series. Raymond, tell me about the early morning protest outside of McConnell's townhouse.
Imagine it's 7:30 in the morning and you're awakened by a protest coming up the block. You can imagine Mitch McConnell, Elaine, what is that out there? And then he saw this. Watch. Now, they were walking up the block saying, chug, 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 I like beer. This is like walking into the Pirates of the Caribbean in Old Town. I mean, the poor man is surrounded by these drunken protesters. This is 7:30 in the morning, and they have Pabst Red Ribbon beer.
Blue Ribbon.
Blue
You're a big beer
Ribbon.
drinker,
I don't touch this stuff.
Yes, if it's not a Sazerac, Arroyo doesn't
That's right.
drink it.
And they have the red Solo cups, and they're saying, I like beer, I like beer. Now, remember, Brett Kavanaugh at his hearings did mention this.
We drank beer, my friends and I, the boys and girls. Yes, we drank beer. I liked beer, still like beer. We drank beer, we liked beer.
You see, my question is, I don't know what this protest is about. Because if you don't like the guy, why are you mimicking his words? Do you support him or not?
I mean, it seemed like any random morning on Frat Row at Dartmouth. I mean, this is what we were doing.
And it didn't look like much of a protest. It looked more like a collection of disgruntled neighbors just wanting to wake Mitch McConnell up.
They had like a zoning grievance with Mitch McConnell.
Now, Laura, this was a creative protest compared to what was going on in the bowels of the Capitol, okay? This is an organizer giving his marchers orders. But are they in kindergarten? You be the judge.
Summoned to vote. Summoned to vote. Let's go watch the vote. Let's go watch the vote. In offices that you wish to communicate with. In offices that you wish to communicate with. I am going to go to Heidi Heitkamp's office. I'm going to go to Heidi Heitkamp's office.
Why? She's on our side.
And you can go to the offices you go to.
Wait. They were going to the wrong office. Right. Weren't they going to Heidi Heitkamp? Like, wait, zombie. Is it co-zombie? She's on our side. Oh, totally my bad.
But why do you have to have a chant and echo for basic orders like we're going to go to the offices?
We're going
to the offices. To the offices.
The offices.
Okay.
Right.
The Me Too movement is getting a pretty big birthday present. In California, the governor signed a bill requiring public corporations in his state to have at least one female director on their boards. By 2021, every board will have to have 3 female directors. Do you think this is even constitutional, Laura?
Well, I think Pacific Islanders, Latino Americans, and every other group should say, what about me?
How about
me
men?
Too.
I just want men to be on the all-female boards. Then there might be parity.
What all-female boards? There are no all-female boards.
Let me tell you about this selfie-suicide movement that's happening.
Yeah.
The Indian Health Services did a study. 259 people in 7 years lost their lives taking these risky selfie shots. Mostly men. People between 10 and 29, but that number is really low. They're saying it's almost 250. It's much higher than that. All they did was look at publicly declared cases. There are a lot that went undeclared, but it's people on rooftops, on monuments. They're in traffic, and they're dying taking these shots. It's real vanity. Okay, before I go. I thought just to bring it all together, Laura.
I like
the whole
beer.
segment.
Oh,
we'll take a selfie. Here, you take that one. It's open. And I'll take a quick selfie. You ready?
All right, ready?
Okay. Okay. Smile. Do we have it? Wait. The angle.
Go to the edge.
Wait. The angle.
Go to the edge. The ACLU used to care about the rights of accused, but with Kavanaugh, well, they spent $1 million comparing him to Bill Cosby. Check on him, please. Medic, former VP of the group, is here to take his former group to task. Help him. And all this Kavanaugh madness has the American Civil Liberties Union undermined their core mission. Among the most outrageous ads to come out of this Kavanaugh fight was the one in which the judge was compared to Bill Cosby and Bill Clinton. Well, our next guest says the group's no longer really a bunch of civil libertarians, that they're, quote, serving a different master now. Here to explain what he meant, by that is former ACLU Vice President Michael Myers, along with civil rights attorney Will Juwando. Michael, I want to start with you. It seems like the ACLU has kind of forfeited their founding mission in favor of what? I guess just a leftist smear?
Yes, in terms of lunatic politics of the left. The ACLU, and when I was proud of it, I served on the board of the ACLU for close to a quarter of a century. I was proud of it when it resisted fashion, when it stood up against to the mob, when it insisted on the cornerstone of liberty, which is the presumption of innocence. Nobody is guilty of anything on the basis of an accusation. You got to have more than just an accusation. A person is not guilty of murder because a cop says you murdered somebody. A person is not guilty of murder because they're black or because they're women. No, you got to have evidence. So the ACLU has abandoned all principles in terms of due process, fairness, fundamental fairness.
All right, let's play the ad.
In favor of the smear.
All right, let's play the ad, and then, Will, you can react. So this was the ad. It's about 23 seconds. Let's watch.
We've seen this before. Denials from powerful men.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I've never seen anything like this.
I categorically and unequivocally deny the allegation against me by Dr. Ford.
America is watching, and as we choose a lifetime seat on our highest court, we cannot have any doubt.
Will, the ACLU is about basic principles, due process, individual liberty, and last time I checked, innocent until proven guilty. And comparing Brett Kavanaugh to President Clinton, obviously DNA evidence in that case, Bill Cosby, multiple accusations of corroborated sexual harassment and worse. How does that comport with the overall mission of the ACLU?
Well, look, you know, the thing here is that we didn't have an investigation. We had Don McGahn minutes after the Senate was forced to say we were going to do an FBI investigation, say, hey, we can't have him talking to everybody. There were dozens of witnesses that were put forward by Dr. Ford and others that just were not talked to. They didn't even speak to Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh, the people.
Well, because it was
involved.
A supplemental investigation, and they had both testified for hours.
You brought
and
up the
hours
DNA evidence and all that stuff. We could have had some of that if we would have had an actual investigation.
How does that
the problem here is that we didn't have that.
How does
we
that
didn't have that at all.
Will, I adore Will. Michael, hold on. I adore Will, but he just said we might have had something like DNA evidence had we had
we
more
would have had
interviews.
more evidence.
Okay.
Not DNA.
All right, yeah, I don't think so.
They weren't even doing DNA.
Yeah,
37 years
okay,
ago.
Will, I mean, Michael, again, the ACLU, I have to say, when I was at Dartmouth, and we got into hot water with a college newspaper that I was working for, the Dartmouth Review, I remember when Ira Glasser, who was, I think, executive director of the ACLU, stood up for us because we were student journalists. But I'm sure he didn't like a lot of the stuff we were doing. We were kind of, you know, we were acting sophomoric. We were sophomores in college. But they stood up for us. And that gave me a sense of what the ACLU is all about. It wasn't partisan.
Right. ACLU used to stand for non-partisanship. It never took a position either for or against candidates for office or nominees for the court. Now it's different. They have the pretense of non-partisanship, and they always say now in all their literature, we are non-partisan. We don't endorse, we don't oppose. But, however, and then they go on and give credence to that they oppose people they disagree with.
They will call them for an
That's not the ACLU. I don't know what you know about the mission of the ACLU. Obviously, you haven't read the policies of the ACLU. You haven't
I used to
read
work at the NAACP.
I said ACLU.
No, you said NAACP.
I know, because I used to work at the NAACP, the national office. I was
What happened to you, man?
I was assistant national director of the NAACP under Roy Wilkins and Ben Hooks.
They're rolling in their graves.
That's when the organization was principled. That's when the organization knew that people had rights and individual rights and the freedom of speech
in this country.
Okay, guys, here, do we have time for this? I just want to play this one thing. Okay, this is from Susan Herman, this At Liberty podcast. I want you guys to listen very, very closely.
The president of the ACLU.
I think we did want to make that statement and to disagree with those who say, well, you shouldn't pay any attention to her because you don't have objective corroboration. So I think this is our statement that we do believe that women should be believed.
All right, really quick, you got 10 seconds.
quick.
All women should be believed, yes?
1 in 3 women are victims of sexual assault. I have 3 daughters. I want their allegations to be taken seriously and investigated. It didn't happen here.
Okay.
You guys can celebrate all you want, but
all
it wasn't
women
investigated.
should be believed whether there's corroboration or not.
It should be investigated.
Okay,
It was not here.
okay. Real quick, Mike, real quick, 10 seconds.
That's just absurd. Because somebody is a woman, you have to believe them. Because somebody says they're a victim of a crime, you have to believe them. No, that's not how we live in America.